And joining us today, Eric Snodgrass with Nutrien as we take a look at this week's weather forecast. And Eric, great to have you back on a Monday, sir. How are you?
Doing pretty well, but I was one of the fortunate few that saw some cooler days over the weekend, so I'm not really complaining here in East Central Illinois.
Well, I was gonna say, I know we saw a few cooler days as well. I'm up in north central Iowa here the last couple of days visiting family, and we take a look at the weather map this week, and you and I were chatting. It's kind of a case of folks who are gonna be happy and some folks who are not gonna be happy here this week. So, what are you seeing shape up across the country?
I think the happiest people are going to be in the Pacific Northwest. I mean, way over there, Washington, Oregon, like that region, because they've not seen above normal temperatures yet this year. And we've got a forecast that's kind of shifting some heat out their way. Now, that's going to take temperatures into the triple digits into parts of the Central Valley of California, which last Friday had highs in the mid 70s, which is very rare for June. But as you come over the mountains, we're watching a very active southwest monsoon, and that's going to feed moisture into the central and northern plains. We've got a Canadian storm track, which actually delivered some much needed rain into parts of Montana. So I got a lot of happy growers in Montana finally getting some rainfall. But we're going to watch for some severe storms in the northern plains today and a weak front that sweeps across the Corn Belt, giving some folks some rain that desperately needed, and some folks are going to miss out on that. So those are the folks I think that are going to be happy. The folks that I'm concerned about are down in the mid South, back to the southern plains. Maybe you can even extend that into the eastern corn belt. There's a region in through there that over the next 7 to 10 days, the likelihood of bringing in widespread rain where everybody kind of gets a drink is very limited. The ridge starts off anchored over parts of the mid South, and then it just moves to the west over towards Texas. And as a result, the heat's going to stay on in a big way there while it starts to maybe return toward normal in the northern plains, which today are still under heat advisory and excessive heat watches and warnings, kind of in their third day of extreme heat in that area. So the pattern is shifting a bit, bringing some relief to some, but it's that mid south to Texas region that I'm most concerned about going forward with this pattern.
Well, Eric, I know I'm starting to see some chatter on social media from farmers. Some are starting to worry about, that they haven't seen a meaningful rainfall as this crop is starting to grow and the heat's making things pop across many parts of the country. And they're wondering, there's being some comparisons to previous years, like a 2012 and things like that. As you look at the weather map shaping up here through the end of June into July, what's the latest? Do you see this heat sticking around? Do you see a shift if we can get some rain to some areas that are maybe starting to wonder if they're going to get some anytime soon for that crop?
Yeah, you're right. I just looking at a map this morning that shows the last 14 days of precipitation in terms of percent of normal, and I shade anything less than 50 to 70% in a pretty deep red. So I look for those reds, and I see it just dotted all over the United States from the Rockies east. There are some places that have seen tremendous amounts of rain, but too many places that are still dry. So the problem is La Nina. The La Nina is still very much there. The trade winds are forecast to be stronger than normal in the Pacific. That's a telltale sign of a healthy La Nina. So what it does is it gives us that triple ridge pattern where we tend to have a ridge somewhere north of Hawaii, a ridge that's somewhere in the midsection of the United States, another one that's off the East Coast. So if we keep bringing that back, it continues to increase the risk of having drought redevelop. So while the pattern may look a bit more favorable for some folks over the next 10 plus days, do we go back to what we just saw where there's near record heat in places and very dry conditions with high evaporation rates? I cannot rule that out. I still see indications that something like that could happen. I'm going to continue to be on alert until there's no reason to be on alert anymore. But that might be several weeks down the road. So, yep, La Nina is still very much influencing this pattern.
Eric, let's shift gears. Obviously everything is on a global scale these days when we talk our markets and agriculture, and of course, looking at weather and ag weather. Europe. I know we've been talking about Europe a little bit, some of the issues they're seeing over there, and it sounds like they're having a few more issues. So, what are you seeing overseas right now?
Yeah, very similar story to kind of what we dealt with, and that was kind of heat that moved west to east. So you probably heard maybe some of the big news stories about the heat in France, where they had temperatures way up in the triple digits. And just a reminder, a lot of folks in France don't have air conditioning. They normally don't need it, but they had high temperatures that were very high. Well, that broke down. They got some storms back in the area, but that heat possibly did some damage. Where's it going? Well, it's heading toward Southern Europe and Romania, and eventually toward Ukraine by the we get through the next 7 to 10 days. And parts of Ukraine have slipped back into dry conditions. They were drier back in early May, late April through May as well. So what I'm starting to see is maybe some regional drought development in eastern Ukraine. But could some of the storms come through to help alleviate some of that? Could, but just like the U.S., I think there's just a longer term risk due to the very loopy behavior of the jet stream, and you can tie all that back to La Nina. So I think we got two different areas in the northern hemisphere that are kind of unfolding stories of risk as we go into the summertime period.
Well, Eric, any other thoughts with what you're seeing across the globe or here in the U.S. on the weather front as we move forward? And, obviously moving into the back half of June, as I mentioned earlier, getting closer to July, a very critical time period for our crops right now.
Yeah, I think what'll be most important to watch is just does the heat that's still in place in the drier conditions in the mid south and into the southern plains affect the crop at the wrong time? You know, a lot of that crop is in pollination now or just past it. Then my attention turns back to the central corn belt once we get to about maybe the second week of July. I think that's when a lot of that crop's going to pollinate. Do we get back into a pattern like we just saw in June? That is still on the table. And then, as we said, I think we're going to have to watch Europe, and I think we're going to have to watch China as well. The Manchurian plain, right now, not hearing a lot of negative stories. Same thing for the North China plain. But should something crop up that hits those three big growing areas at the wrong time, which it just feels like the last couple of years that that's a better chance than not happening. I'll keep an eye on it and keep you posted.
Well, we appreciate the analysis as always and the forecast. And he has a great daily newsletter. The link is on our website, markettalkag.com. With that, Eric Snodgrass of Nutrien. Always appreciate it, sir. Have a great week.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.